I can talk you through it. I mean, there are basically 7 principles I've got here, which it's like a checklist, yeah. And some of them I think are things you can probably do with some objective discussion, and some of them are quite hard to do without a little bit of consumer feedback. You know, especially depending on whether the target customer is broadly similar to you and your team,
right,
or completely different.
Right.
You know, I mean, I have been in circumstances back in the day where, you know, I think about the 90s. London ad agency world. There was let's just say there's a certain type of people who were working in those businesses. They were very young, they were pretty affluent, and they weren't necessarily typical of your average, you know, homemaker in middle of or northern Britain, you know, let's say. And actually, sometimes the hardest bit to do, the first criteria is whether or not the idea resonates. Yeah, with your audience. And that's, I think, the hardest one to do without some feedback. Quality or quantity, it doesn't matter. Just get some feedback from
the actual audience that you're trying to connect with.
Yeah, I find that hard. I mean, because it's hard to be a different person and imagine what they're like. Yeah, anyway. But that's the first thing. Does it resonate with them emotionally? You know, does it connect with them emotionally? And you even just a couple of groups or a few depth interviews, you know, you just know, right target audience, you can see it in their faces, you're observing it. They light up, they're animated. When they talk about the advertising, they're enthusiastic, they remember it all.
Yeah.
It's not as complex as all that.
So just to pause on that moment, idea. So is that through focus group? Like, would you actually, in your case and in your history, would you have had like a draft of the creative and you're putting that in front of a focus group kind of thing?
Exactly. Yeah. Either you have a prototype or a way of storyboard or a way of describing what the idea is or the ad. And again, you explain it to people and you see their reactions. You ask them their reactions, and what you're looking for is, you know, like I said, you know, enthusiasm and interest in the whole idea. Or you can take it a bit further. You can turn it into a filmed kind of storyboard or an animatic, you know, a rough. If it's a video ad, you can turn it into a rough version. It probably still takes you $10,000, $15,000 or so to create, but nothing like it might cost you to produce.
Like a couple $100,000 or $1 million for some,
If it's a big production, yeah, exactly. And then you can show that to either people in qualitative or kind of quantitative settings, and ask some very, you know, straightforward questions really about their reactions to that. Yeah, exactly. I'm a big believer. If you're going to spend that kind of money on the production and the airing, actually spending.
Don't guess.
It's well worth it, and not even, you know, because you can learn so much. You know, a big part of my background is research, so stop me now, otherwise I'll go on about the value of research. But you can see how it's value here. Sure. The value is very much here. Does it resonate?
Yeah. Okay.
But the second one is the role of the brand, and that's something. Although you can get this, of course, you can get this from research very, very well. But actually, the things you can do even if you don't have any research, understand the role of the brand. You know, it's one of the biggest failings of very potentially impactful advertising is that the creative's amazing and it tells a wonderful, engaging story, but the brand isn't really credited for it.
Right.
Yeah. Right. I'm desperately trying to find some stats that I knew when I was at Kantar, but now I'm not. I can't find it online anywhere. But I do remember it was about sort of under 50% of people who recognise seeing an ad. You know, show them an ad. Yeah, I remember seeing that. Show them some frames from it, or whatever, and you ask them what brand it was for. On average, across the world, less than half got it right. That's the we're talking. You know, it was like 45% got it right. More than half of the people don't get the right brand, and that's because actually there's quite an art in making sure the brand is connected to the bits that you're. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
So, and that's go on.
No, I was just thinking. I remember reading this book called, and there's some really great videos on YouTube about winning the story wars. And they talk about using Joseph Campbell's story arc, you know, the hero journey and that kind of thing. And I always think about, like, I think about the role for the brand, oftentimes it's natural for us to go, well, if we're telling the Star Wars story, we always think that the brand is like the Luke Skywalker. But I think often, like when we think about characters and roles, often the customer is probably better off as being Luke Skywalker, and then the brand often is better as like Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the analogy now. Or the I'm a half Star Wars fan, therefore I get these things
Okay,
wrong.
okay,
Basically the rebels in when I say the rebels in sort of 1, 2, and 3. You know,
yeah, yeah,
as
yeah, yeah, yeah.
not the Empire. What do you call it? Oh,
Yeah, no. So then, yeah, yeah. I'm struggling
yeah.
too.
We can
I know
edit
what you
this.
mean, though. Yeah, totally.
The
Um,
good guys. The
yeah,
good guys.
totally. The good guys.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or even the Force. Even the Force is anyway.
right.
But the point is that the brand needs to. There are different story structures you can use. It's not
Mm-hmm.
just one structure. I work a lot with Ameritest, which is a brilliant company for pre-testing and
Mm-hmm.
ad testing. And they talk about, there are 4 story structures that you can use that typically used in advertising, and each one, the role of the brand is different.
Yeah,
Like if you've got that kind of, the classic kind of emotional pivot, you
right.
know, where things come to a head and it's very dramatic and things are going downhill, and then suddenly things are restored and everything's
Yeah,
all right. The
yeah,
brand needs to be the catalyst
right.
in that story structure. The brand is the catalyst, and if it is, it'll get remembered.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And again, in the book, in one of the follow-up sections, there's a discussion about the ways in which you can make your brand.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't
Yeah,
have to be
sure.
a catalyst. It could be the benefactor who brings you this great
Right.
story. But anyway, but that is
But
crucial.
it is about picking a definitive role, and probably, I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into that too. I imagine like the product life cycle, the stages of the life cycle would probably play a role, the target
Oh,
audience, and all those kinds of things. The story of
oh,
the creative itself probably has, sometimes you're
exactly.
better off in being in this position versus that position. But
Depending on the storyline, yeah, and exactly. And like, a classic thing is, if you're a new brand that no one's heard of, you actually probably need to have a kind of pivotal role in the actual story,
right.
right? To explain what you're doing and who you are and how you contribute. If you're a very big established brand like Dove, for
Mm-hmm.
example, then actually you can come at the end because you're endorsing an amazing emotional journey that you've just shown,
Right.
and it worked. But
Right.
you couldn't do it if you're a new brand; it just wouldn't work.
Right. Yeah.
And you're not building on established associations,
Yeah.
so it wouldn't be connected to your brand. Whereas a brand like Dove, of course, it would,
Right.
because history of 5 or 10, no, 15 or 20 years of building a particular style and
Yeah.
theme. Yeah,
So actually, you just mentioned associations, and that's like the third piece of assessing creative ideas. So
exactly.
is that going back to the first part of our conversation around entry points and triggers or customer categories,
Yeah,
sort of how they think about this and how they think about you?
exactly. It's part of your strategy. It's your strategy of what kind of associations are we, what kind of, for example, needs around the category are we trying to
Mm-hmm.
link to our brand? Or what benefits around those needs are we trying to link to our brand? Exactly. It's all about knowing your. I call it the brand pinata. That's
Mm-hmm.
my particular way of thinking about it. But there are lots of frameworks. What is it about your brand you're trying to link in consumers' brains that means that when they come to choose the category, choose
Right.
which brand to buy category, your brand will be triggered. So you want to, and again, it's important that that's consistent, is built up again at time and time again. So yes, that's actually the third thing. Traditionally, that's just called communication, but it's more specific. It's like,
Yeah, it's like
yeah,
designed communication to create that link between the brand and then that association.
or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Oh, the fourth one is distinctive assets, and again, this is a big. I think it's something that kind of is losing its way a bit in marketing, in an interesting way. In that, you look back to the advertising in the sort of 70s and 80s, for example, there was a lot. I think distinctive assets were really powerful.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I worked for SC Johnson and Reckitt Benckiser, which is RB now, and there were lots of brands in the kind of, especially in the packaged goods area.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, more beyond that, that were really strong at using creating and building very strong, distinctive assets.
So what do you mean, just for level setting, distinctive assets? Like, are you saying logo, tagline?
Logo is the clearest of all. Yes,
Right.
The clearest of all distinctive asset, but it can go beyond that. I mean, in the UK, Cadbury's is incredibly associated with the colour purple.
Right.
Purpley, silvery purple colour, for example. But that's another way of doing it. I'm thinking this is going to embarrass me, but I'll probably get the notes all wrong. But
Oh yeah. McDonald's, I'm loving it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not bad. Yeah. Or,
You nailed it.
I'll try another one then. I'm so confident. Wait. Is
that the Intel one?
Yes. Oh, I'll stop that while I'm ahead. So Sonic distinctive assets are incredible. I just saw something on LinkedIn the other day. I think it was from Ipsos, showing that if you have a distinctive sound and you put it in an ad, that makes branded recall much higher, and yet it's hardly ever used these days.
Yeah.
Classic jingles like Mr. Bean shines umpteen things clean. I'm not going to sing that one. Or again, I'm going back to the days when I worked for these packaged goods, like Toilet Duck. Have you come across the Toilet Duck toilet cleaner at all? Is it?
No, I don't know if it's the same here.
No, it's stopped in Europe.
Yeah.
Came to the UK. It's the one with it was a very successful band, and I think it still is, but it grew massively in the 80s, etc. And it has this very distinct pack shape right at the end that is very curved and looks a bit like a duck's neck. Yeah. And that is so it stands out.
Yeah.
And also it communicates the fact that it gets. This is not very savoury for your podcast, but it gets under the rim of the toilet. It's very easy to get because of the shape.
Sure. Okay, yeah. No, I totally get it, because I don't know if it's the same one, but we have the same kind of toilet bowl cleaner, and it's got that neck kind of thing.
That's part of it.
But yeah, like the packaging. So yeah, the packaging is distinctive. Like
or
Absolut vodka, the bottle, or the Coke bottle, like that's an asset, right?
The asset, the shape of the Coke bottle is an asset. Or the Jolly Green Giant.
Right.
I'm trying the song again.
Like the NBC chimes.
All of these things.
Yeah.
All of these, and I think that should be part of your brand definition.
Right.
You should say, right, we're going to build the following 5 things. There are some companies that are brilliant at this. Mondelez is wonderful at this. You think of Milka, the chocolate bar across many countries. It's got the cow and the other color and the blob of milk. One of my favorites is Oreos. Actually, they even have a custom, that's associated with their brand.
The twist,
Lick Dunk, Twist Lick Dunk. Oh, that is a marketer's dream to have an custom that's become part of the culture.
Right.
My wife was telling me the other day that was featured in, not a sitcom, a drama series. When someone was feeling down, they pre-twisted it for her so she could lick it. It's part of the culture.
Yeah.
Now that is branding.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. That's distinctive assets on acid, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay. So then generate discussion is another.
Yeah, generate discussion. Yeah, I think that's a bonus. That's to be honest, 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100, an ad is not going to necessarily generate discussion. But if you do, it can be a huge asset. And obviously, advertising the Super Bowl, given the expense of it, you expect and hope and need to generate discussion. I wouldn't say it's kind of necessarily should be planned into your strategy unless you're a certain brand that can easily generate it. But it's a nice bonus to have.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I used these distinctive assets with a few clients of ours recently, and what we were using the generate discussion bit was to think about in a B2B context. We were thinking about knowing that it's a complex sale. I mean, there's a lot of decision makers. So we wanted to think about their core audience who they were trying to reach and how that ad could potentially be used within their internal network that they could generate discussion.
Oh, okay. That's
so
nice.
They could use the ad almost as like a social, I would call it a social object, but like as a tool that they could bring inside of their organization that helps stimulate a conversation.
I like that. That's nice. It's like a conversation starter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
But
almost
something
like a sales aid that is just, but it's an ad and it does the work for you without you having to be there.
I like that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's like yeah, thought-provoking conversation starter.
Mm-hmm.
If it's relevant, it gets people. It shows that you
Yeah.
understand,
Yeah.
doesn't
So
it?
that's the way we were thinking. I wasn't even thinking about it being the sort of the viral kind of like
Oh yeah, yeah.
spin, but yeah, that's it's interesting.
No, that's good. That's a new spin. I'll put that in the second edition, actually. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
the next is about inspiring creativity, and this is the idea of having. There are some creative ideas that are one-offs, I
Right.
think, and there are some that are very fertile. Let's call it.
Mm-hmm.
You know. Do you again? I'm sorry if this is too UK centric, but obviously these examples I know best. There was an ad in the UK for Cadbury's,
Mm-hmm.
very famous one, featuring a gorilla who's.
No.
Uh, I'll press on.
Okay. I can try and
Imagine,
find the link to it though.
no, well, yeah, I'll try. Imagine a gorilla, right?
Are you gonna sing like a gorilla now?
Really of Phil Collins. Now, which song was it? I think it's I Can Feel It in the Air Tonight.
Okay.
You know that one?
Yeah, yeah.
Do you remember the drum solo? You go, think back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Drum solo, a very powerful drum solo at the
Yeah.
beginning of that song, right? I really
Yeah.
can't.
No, I'm with you. I can totally hear it in my head.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Hopefully, at least a few other listeners will also do that.
Yeah.
It's very powerful. Cadbury's created this ad with this sort of gorilla character who did this, and it was amazing. It was just beautiful. It was one of the most captivating films of all time.
Mm-hmm.
Scored at the top of the list of most engaging ads at Kantar Milbrown's measurement, right?
Okay.
And it was amazing, and it created a lot of discussion and saliency and interest for the brand. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea was about it generating that sense of release and joy like chocolate does.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't really think that was the main way the advertising worked. It worked because it created such amazing saliency, just saliency for the brand. And then the agency tried to follow this up with several other ads, and they never came close.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
they never really came close. Whereas I think a strong idea inspires lots and lots and lots and lots of great ads.
Mm-hmm. So as I'm thinking about that, the inspired creativity, and maybe I'm wondering how these things connect, because the next one is easily adapted, but what I was just thinking of is like the Old Spice ones when that first came out, the Man Smell Like a Man. Like in my mind, and maybe that's kind of where you're going, like where they had multiple versions of that, and they even had that famous Twitter campaign where he was answering live tweets.
Yeah.
They did 30 or 40 of those in a row, and the character itself was, creating these new ads almost in real time.
Yeah.
So is that, as opposed to the gorilla where it was almost a one-off, is that what you're thinking about? Where on the other hand,
because they had an idea there. They had the idea. I'm trying to remember exactly what that idea was about, but it was kind of like the perfect man. The man that every woman, the ultimate man that every woman would love, would find attractive.
Yeah.
In a kind of cheesy but brilliant way. And the agency immediately thought of all these different ways they could execute that through video and through online, through this character, etc., etc. So it had a life of its own, exactly that.
Okay.
It's like if I was saying if I was commissioning ad agencies to pitch my work, I would say give me an idea and give me 5 or even 10. Just don't mock them up. Just give me an idea of how this idea could be brought to life in social media or on YouTube or on TV or on poster on all the different channels.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost the important thing is that the agency finds it quite easy to come up with these things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Rather than I'm not sure,
Right. And so is that what the part about which is the 7th assessment tool, that it's easily adapted, that it fits on all different kinds of mediums?
Yeah, it's connected. The extension of easily adapted is meant to be more adapted for different markets or countries, for example. If,
Okay.
if you're an international brand or a brand that needs to go across multiple
Sure.
regions, some ideas lend themselves very well and work across cultures because they're based on some sort of human truth,
Right.
fundamental truth. Some are more based in a cultural specific
Mm-hmm.
idea, in which case they're less easily adapted. But yeah, you're right. Maybe it's 6 points rather than 7, but the idea is that it's adapted across cultures as well.